My name is Mia, and today is my wedding day. I married Jason, the heir to the Ravenshill family, the wealthiest dynasty in the northern city. The only downside is that my husband is a vegetable. 3 months ago, Jason was involved in a bizarre car accident and fell into a coma on the spot. Doctors diagnosed him as being in a vegetative state, with little chance of ever waking up. Jason's grandfather somehow found a so-called master who claimed that only by marrying a girl with a compatible birth chart could his grandson's last breath be kept alive. Unfortunately, I was that unlucky girl. What's worse, my gold-digging stepmother, without batting an eye, handed over my birth details for a dowry of $30 million and 2 corporate projects. Right now, I'm sitting in a bedroom larger than my living room, wearing an exquisitely tailored wedding dress worth a small fortune. The beeping of medical equipment fills the air, mingling with the sterile scent of disinfectant, making this wedding feel more like an elaborate funeral. And my groom, Jason, lies motionless on the enormous bed, eyes closed, complexion pale. If not for the faint rise and fall of his chest, he might as well be an exquisitely crafted wax figure. To be honest, he's ridiculously handsome. With sharply defined brows, starry eyes, and a perfectly straight nose, he's the kind of magazine cover-worthy face I'd normally drool over in financial journals. What a shame, this Adonis can't move. What's the difference between him and a high-end collectible figurine? Madam, it's time for you to bathe the young master. A middle-aged woman in nursing uniform walked in, her tone perfunctory but her eyes betraying a hint of disdain. I understood. A woman who married a vegetative man for money wouldn't be regarded highly by anyone. I nodded, took the towel and basin, and walked to the bedside. The nurse didn't leave, standing by like a supervisor. Resigned, I wrung out the towel and began wiping Jason's face. His skin was delicate, cool to the touch. When I reached his tightly closed eyes, the resentment in my heart finally boiled over. Why? Why did my life have to be arranged like this? Just because my biological father was weak and my stepmother malicious? Just because I had no money or power, destined to be a sacrificial lamb? As soon as the caregiver left, I locked the door behind me, plopped down on the carpet by the bed, and kicked off my wedding night's special program, a full-on rant session, directed at the motionless man lying in bed. Hey, Jason, can you hear me? Doesn't matter if you can't, you're listening anyway. What were you thinking, driving so fast at your age? Trying to race to heaven? And look where that got you, sleeping straight through to the final episode. And your relatives, my God. At the wedding today, they were all dressed to the nines, looking at me like I was something disgusting. That aunt of yours, the one whose eyeliner practically reached her temples, said to me, "Make sure you take good care of Jason from now on." The way she said it, anyone would think I was some high-end nanny she bought and paid for. And don't even get me started on your cousin Yo-Yo. She kept bragging about her new limited edition bag, saying her boyfriend gave it to her. I took one look, Fake. Should I tell her, or nah? I talked to thin air until my mouth went dry, and of course he gave no response. Exhausted from yelling, I let out a long sigh and prepared to wash up. Just as I stood up, the corner of my eye seemed to catch the slightest tremble of Jason's eyelashes. I froze instantly, thinking I must be seeing things. I leaned in closer, staring fixedly at his eyes. Those long, thick lashes cast faint shadows under the light, utterly still, devoid of any vitality. Must be my imagination. I chuckled self-deprecatingly, I must be exhausted to the point of hallucinating. I turned and walked toward the bathroom, completely unaware that behind me, those tightly shut eyes slowly cracked open a sliver. In those deep pupils, there wasn't a trace of the haze of unconsciousness, only clarity, and a hint of, barely suppressed amusement. On the second day of our marriage, I officially began my caretaker career. At 6 a.m, the nurse woke me. Then began the routine tasks, wiping his body, moving his joints, moistening his lips with cotton swabs, and listening to the doctors and nutritionists report his daily physical indicators. Throughout the entire process, not a single member of the Ravenshill family showed up. It wasn't until 10 a.m. that the butler informed me I was to go to the main house's living room to serve tea to the elders. I changed into a decent lawn dress and entered the main house, which was as resplendent as a palace. In the living room, all the key members of the Ravenshill family had gathered. Seated in the place of honor was Jason's grandfather, Chris, an elderly man who exuded authority without even trying. To his left were Jason's father, Richard, and mother, Catherine. Richard wore a stern expression, while his wife clutched a handkerchief, occasionally dabbing at the corners of her eyes where no tears existed. On the right side sat the subjects of yesterday's rant, Uncle William and his wife Lana, whose eyeliner could double as a ruler. Beside them was their slick-haired son Henry, currently giving me an unapologetic full-body scan with his eyes. At the far end of the table sat my delicate cousin Yo-Yo. To an outsider, this gathering might have looked like some kind of imperial inquisition. Mia, Jason's grandfather, began in a booming voice, "Now that you've entered the Ravenshill family, you must abide by our rules. The most important one is taking good care of Jason." "Yes, Grandpa." I nodded obediently. "Dad, don't make it hard on a child," second Aunt Lana said hypocritically. "Seeing Jason like this breaks everyone's heart. It's also pitiful that Mia is so young and already facing a living widowhood." Her words spoke of pity, but her face was full of gloating. I sneered inwardly, but forced a smile uglier than crying on my face. "Second aunt is right. But it's my blessing to be able to bring luck to Jason through marriage. As long as he can get better, I don't mind anything." Listening to myself say these words nearly made me sick. But the elders loved hearing them. Sure enough, Jason's grandfather's expression softened considerably. Only Jason's biological mother Catherine snorted coldly and turned her head away, clearly believing a poor girl like me had tainted her noble son. Tea ceremony, receiving red envelopes, enduring lectures. After going through the whole ritual, I felt more exhausted than after taking an exam. When we finally made it to lunch, the long dining table was laden with rare delicacies. I was just about to indulge heartily to mend my wounded spirit when Mia, mother-in-law Catherine, suddenly spoke up, "Go check if Jason's drip has finished." My spoon froze midair as I'd just picked it up. "Mom, there are nurses taking care of it," I said softly. What nurse could be as attentive as his own wife? She didn't even lift her eyelids. "Go now. Jason's matters come first." Not a single person at the table spoke up for me. Silently, I put down my spoon and stood up. "Fine. You win." I returned to that so-called bridal chamber, where the nurse said the nutrient solution had just been replaced and would take at least another half hour. My stomach growled with hunger, but I couldn't bear to go back and face that family's hypocritical expressions. So, I rummaged through the room and found a cup of instant noodles. Boiling water, tearing open the packaging, dropping in the noodle block and seasoning. Soon, a cheap yet tantalizing aroma began to spread through the room that was otherwise filled with the scent of high-end disinfectant. I forked up the noodles, slurped them down, and squinted my eyes in bliss. "Jason, oh Jason, you've really got me into trouble this time," I muttered between bites, directing today's complaints at the man lying motionless on the bed. "Your mother is hands down the most expert-level green tea bitch I've ever encountered. Clearly despising me, yet putting on that holier-than-thou I only want what's best for my son act while humiliating me in front of the whole family. Mark my words, in any palace intrigue drama, her type wouldn't survive past episode 2. And your father?" That perpetually icy expression like the whole world owes him $8 million. His son's comatose, his wife's performing theatrics, yet he acts like some detached bystander. Mark my words, the Ravenshill family empire will crumble under his watch. But the most laughable is your uncle. The way he looks at me might as well have ambition tattooed across his forehead. I'd bet $1 your accident has his fingerprints all over it. I was speaking enthusiastically, completely unaware that the heart rate monitor screen showed a very slight, abnormal fluctuation in Jason's curve. After finishing my instant noodles, I let out a satisfied burp. Just as I was about to clean up, my phone rang. It was my stepmother calling. "Mia, are you settling in okay with the Ravenshill family? Are they treating you well?" Her voice dripped with fake concern the moment the call connected. Everything's fine, Mom, I replied expressionlessly. That's good, that's good. She abruptly changed the subject. By the way, your father's company has been having some cash flow problems lately. Do you think you could mention it to the Ravenshills? Consider it, helping your dad out? The fox has finally shown its tail. I laughed in anger. Mom, I married a vegetative patient, not an ATM. Do you really think a bride bought for superstition like me has that much face? Oh dear, what kind of talk is that? You're Jason's wife now, isn't this just a small favor you could ask for? I hung up directly, unwilling to hear another word. Overwhelming rage and helplessness flooded over me like a tide. Curling up on the carpet with my knees hugged to my chest, for the first time in this icy cold room, I felt the urge to cry. I buried my face in my knees, not wanting the surveillance to see my disheveled state. Just then, I heard an extremely faint sound, like a finger tapping against the bed frame. Tap. It was very soft, but in the quiet room, it was startlingly clear. I abruptly lifted my head and looked at the bed. Jason still lay there motionless, unchanged. Another hallucination? No. This time, I was absolutely certain. That sound had come from the direction of his hand, resting limply at his side. My heart began to pound wildly. An absurd, audacious, spine-chilling thought surged through my mind. Could he be awake? Once this thought took root, it grew wildly in my heart like creeping vines. Over the following days, I began observing him quietly without revealing anything. I still wiped him down and moved his joints every day, and when no one was around, I continued venting to him about the eccentricities of his family. Jason, your cousin Yo-Yo came flaunting in front of me again today. Said she's going to some high society debutante ball and asked if I had any fancy dresses. I really wanted to lend her my caregiver uniform. I guarantee it'd make her the brightest star of the evening. Your second aunt went even further. Today she pulled me aside to introduce me to all sorts of promising young talents. Said someone as young as me shouldn't spend my whole life watching over you. Reading between the lines, I think she wants to set me up with a lover so she can completely control me. The way she's scheming, I could hear it all the way at home. As I spoke, I kept a firm watch on his fingers, eyelashes, and the heart rate monitor beside him from the corner of my eye. Yet, he remained like a genuine vegetative patient, utterly unresponsive. That precise instrument showed no abnormal fluctuations either. Could it really have been just my imagination that day? I refused to believe it. A woman's intuition told me this man was definitely hiding something. I decided to increase the dosage. That night after the caregiver left, I locked the door as usual. But instead of sitting on the carpet, I pulled up a chair and positioned myself right by his bedside. I turned on my phone and clicked on an audio file I had downloaded long ago. It was a rather exhilarating storytelling performance. They say that Benjamin, in the dead of night, walked across the unmarked graves. The eerie wind howled, and ghostly wails filled the air. The broadcaster's voice, rising and falling with suspenseful cadence, echoed through the silent hospital room, making it all the more chilling. As I listened, I munched on an apple with relish, but my eyes remained fixed on Jason without blinking. Just as expected. When the storytelling reached the part where a cold hand rested on Benjamin's shoulder, I clearly saw his Adam's apple move ever so slightly up and down. That's a swallowing motion. Though extremely subtle, I caught it. My heart leaped with wild joy, but I kept a straight face. Turning off the audiobook, I patted my chest and muttered to myself, "Ah, that scared me to death. No more listening, time for bed." Then, I deliberately stretched lazily and, pretending it was unintentional, tossed the apple core in my hand right into the trash bin in the farthest corner from the bed. After finishing all this, I yawned and turned off the main light in the room, leaving only a dim bedside lamp. Instead of going to sleep in the small room next door, I lay down fully clothed on the companion sofa by the bed, turning my back to him and pretending to be asleep. Time passed minute by minute. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Holding my breath, I waited patiently. About half an hour later, just as I was about to truly fall asleep, I heard it, an extremely faint sound of fabric rustling. Then came the same faint sound of footsteps getting out of bed. My heart leapt into my throat. He really got up. I remained motionless, feigning deep sleep, but my ears were perked up like radar. I heard him walk to the corner of the room, the direction where I'd thrown the trash can. Then came the sound of someone rummaging through garbage. What was he looking for? That apple core? It suddenly dawned on me, I'd held the apple directly in my hand while eating it. Which meant my complete fingerprints were left on that apple core. Was he verifying my identity? Or did he have some other purpose? After a while, I heard him walk into the bathroom. The sound of flushing water followed. Then, he silently returned to bed. The entire process took no more than 5 minutes. Had I not been wide awake, I would never have noticed anything unusual. Only when I was certain he had settled back down did I dare to quietly turn over, facing his direction. In the dim light, I saw him lying there exactly as before, in the same position as when I'd fallen asleep. But this time, I knew. This man, the pride of North City whom everyone believed had become a vegetative, was not only conscious, but could walk on his own 2 feet, even possessing the meticulousness to dispose of an apple core that might expose his secret. He was acting. He was putting on an act for everyone. A huge mystery unfolded before my eyes. Why would he do this? And what really happened in that car accident? And I, the one fate had haphazardly pushed to his side, became the only one who knew the truth. In that moment, I didn't feel fear. Instead, it was an excitement unlike anything I'd ever known. I feel like my damn, boring, manipulated life has suddenly become quite interesting. Confirming that Jason was pretending to sleep completely overturned my state of mind. Before, I had been a resentful woman forced into this marriage. Now I was an ally holding earth-shattering secrets, capable of overturning the table at any moment. I began finding creative ways to test him, or rather, tease him. That day, right after the nurse finished changing his dressings, I happened to walk in carrying a freshly brewed bowl of soup. "You're truly the epitome of a devoted wife," the nurse complimented politely. I smiled faintly, "It's my duty." The moment the nurse left, I immediately set aside the abalone and sea cucumber soup and pulled out from behind my back a box of self-heating stinky rice noodles. I deftly unwrapped the packaging in front of Jason, arranged the ingredients, poured in cold water, and covered the pot. Soon, an intense, indescribable aroma of fermented bamboo shoots began permeating the room. I pulled up a small table right by his bedside. Slurping the noodles enthusiastically, I gave him a vivid live commentary. "Jason, can you smell that? This is called luocefen. You know what they say, smells awful but tastes divine. That punchy aroma really hits the spot, doesn't it? Feels like it's blasting open the crown of your skull, right?" While talking, I kept a close eye on his reactions. His face remained expressionless, but his nostrils twitched, just the tiniest bit. He was holding it in. My heart was bursting with joy as I deliberately emphasized my words. "Hey, what do you think, if I accidentally spill this broth on your $1,000,000 bedsheets, would your mom spontaneously combust on the spot?" I noticed his eyelid twitch. "Huh. Couldn't resist, could you?" My playful side took over as I skewered a piece of pickled bamboo shoot with a fork and waved it in front of his nose. "Come on, handsome, open wide. Let me feed you. This is the good stuff, cures all ailments." Just as the fork was about to touch his lips, I caught a movement in the corner of my eye. The steady line on the heart monitor suddenly spiked sharply before quickly returning to normal. I immediately pulled back, knowing when to quit while I was ahead. "Forget it, seeing how pitiful you are, I won't tease you anymore." I stuffed the sour bamboo shoots into my own mouth, chewing with satisfaction. I knew he must have cursed me 1,000 times in his heart. A woman married into the family to bring luck, not only failing to fulfill her duties but daring to eat stinky rice noodles by his sickbed. This was simply outrageous. But I felt that he might actually enjoy this kind of provocation. Because from that day on, I noticed that whenever I started complaining or doing something outrageous, the heart rate monitor would always cooperatively show some slight but undeniable fluctuations. It became an unspoken way of communication between us. For example, when I mentioned how his second uncle William was placing his own people in the company again, his heart rate would instantly quicken. When I mentioned how his cousin Yo-Yo's counterfeit bag was exposed in public, sending her running home in tears, his heart rate would become steady and strong, tinged with a hint of schadenfreude. And when I talked about how my stepmother called again to ask for money, only to be shut down by me, his heart rate would even produce small, consecutive beats, almost like a round of applause. This discovery fascinated me. I began to see him as a special kind of audience, a judge who could only score me through his heartbeat. What I looked forward to most every day was our alone time after the caretaker left in the evening. I would share everything I encountered during the day with him, turning the absurd words and actions of the Ravenshill family into comedy routines for his ears. "Your mom's acting up again today. She hired some nutritionist who just returned from abroad, saying your diet must now be measured down to the milligram." When I saw that meal plan, good Lord, the daily portion wouldn't even fill the gaps between my teeth. I said, "Mom, what Jason needs most right now is the warmth of home cooking, not lab data." Guess what she replied? She said I don't understand science. I thought to myself, she's the one who doesn't understand human nature. And then there's your cousin Henry. He cornered me in the hallway today, trying to get handsy. So I kicked him right in, well, you know where. He's probably walking bow-legged now. Did I do good? If you think so, make your heartbeat quicken twice. The moment the words left my mouth, the monitor beeped, his pulse actually sped up twice. I couldn't help but laugh. This feeling, it was truly magical. Between us lay the disguise of life and death, yet through the most primal way, we forged the deepest connection. I didn't know why he pretended to sleep, nor what schemes he was truly plotting. But I knew that in this icy, calculating mansion, this vegetative man lying on the bed was my only, and most loyal, ally. Jason and I were thoroughly enjoying our sickroom duet, but the Ravenshill family clearly had no intention of letting me relax. The first to lose patience was second Aunt Lana. That day, she unexpectedly came bearing a pile of tonics, her face blooming with chrysanthemum-like smiles. "Mia, you've been working so hard lately." She took my hand with a warmth that could pass for motherly affection. "Look at you, you've lost weight." A shiver of disgust ran through me as I subtly withdrew my hand. "Just tell me what you want, Aunt." "Ah, you silly girl." She gave me a mock-scolding look before lowering her voice. "Here's the thing. Your uncle is currently bidding for a major overseas project. But, your father-in-law, I mean Jason's dad, hasn't been very supportive. You know how it is, with Jason's current condition, someone has to step up for the Ravenshill family business. Your uncle only has the family's best interests at heart." I understood. They wanted me to be their lobbyist. "Auntie," I said with feigned innocence, blinking my eyes, as a just-married bride brought in for a lucky marriage, how could I possibly have the right to speak in front of Uncle? "Of course you can." Lana grew impatient. "You're Jason's wife now. Go talk to your mother-in-law and have her whisper in his ear. Once we secure this project, you won't go unrewarded." As she spoke, she pulled a card from her bag and stuffed it into my hand. "There's $500,000 here, consider it pocket money from your aunt." I held the card between my fingers, laughing coldly inside. Did she really think she could buy me off with $500,000? But I didn't refuse. Taking the card, I put on a hesitant yet slightly greedy expression. "Well, I'll try. But I can't promise anything." "It'll work, it's bound to work." Lana beamed with joy when she saw me take the money and left cheerfully. No sooner had she left than I entered Jason's room. I waved the bank card before his eyes. "See this? From your second aunt. $500,000 to whisper in your father's ear and help your uncle snatch the project. Tell me, is this a bad deal or what?" The heart rate monitor showed no fluctuation. Apparently, this outcome didn't surprise him one bit. Did you already know your uncle had designs on the company's business? I asked. Her heartbeat quickened twice. As expected. All right. Since you're already aware, I'll help you make this act even more convincing. I took the card and went straight to my mother-in-law Catherine's room. At that time, she was having afternoon tea with a few wealthy ladies. As soon as I entered, the atmosphere turned cold. "Mom," I called out respectfully. "What's the matter?" she asked in an unfriendly tone. In front of everyone, I placed the bank card on the table. "Mom, this is what Aunt Lana just gave me." My face was full of grievance, my eyes reddening instantly. "Aunt Lana said she wants me to persuade you to support Uncle's overseas project. But with Jason still bedridden, how can we let Uncle's people interfere with company matters? It doesn't make sense, emotionally or logically. I can't take this money." My words were so moving, delivered with tears and heartfelt emotion. Catherine's expression changed instantly. She already disliked Uncle, and now that I'd exposed this matter, it was like pouring oil onto her explosive temper. How outrageous! She slammed the table, startling the wealthy ladies present. "How dare that Lana treat us like this?" The wealthy ladies began whispering among themselves, their gazes towards me shifting from disdain to sympathy with a hint of admiration. I had successfully crafted the image of a loyal wife devoted solely to her husband before my mother-in-law and her circle. Having finished this performance, it was only natural to return and report to my exclusive audience. "So? Isn't my acting worthy of an Oscar?" I said proudly to Jason lying on the bed. "Not only did I expose your aunt's scheme, but I also scored points with your mom. Now she probably sees me as her own daughter." The heart rate monitor displayed a series of light, rhythmic fluctuations. He was applauding for me. My heart swelled with joy. But the matter wasn't over yet. I decided to give him something even more exciting. I took out my phone and dialed Aunt Lana's number. "Auntie," I said with a choked voice, "I'm sorry, I messed things up." "What happened?" Lana's voice on the other end sounded tense. I went to see my mother-in-law with the card you gave me, trying to put in a good word for you. But she thought I was trying to stir up trouble between you. She scolded me and threw the card away." I performed with dramatic flair. "Auntie, it's all my fault for being so clumsy." "Your money? I can't find it either. Not only did I sell her out, I also conveniently swindled her out of $500,000. The other end of the phone was met with prolonged silence. I could almost picture Lana's face, twisted beyond recognition at that moment. "And no, it's fine," she forced the words through gritted teeth. "It's not your fault. It's your mother-in-law who's utterly unreasonable." After hanging up, I rolled on the floor laughing. Turning to Jason, I asked, "Hey, how would you rate that performance of mine just now?" This time, the heart rate monitor didn't immediately respond. Just as I was wondering if he had fallen asleep, I heard a deeply suppressed, throaty chuckle coming from deep within. Though it was just one sound, fleeting and gone in an instant. But I heard it. I swear, I truly heard it. This man, he actually laughed at me. Since discovering that Jason could be amused by me, I unlocked a whole new world. My hospital room stand-up comedy grew bolder in content and more varied in form. Sometimes, I would read him financial news, then use a storyteller's tone to comment on the romantic entanglements of various business tycoons. They say that billionaire CEO boss splurged a fortune for that up-and-coming starlet. Little did he know, she was actually a corporate spy sent by a rival company. Every time this happened, his heart rate would become unusually active, as if listening to some earth-shattering piece of gossip. Sometimes I'd even buy some, special magazines, like the Overbearing CEO Falls for Me series, and read them to him with vivid descriptions. "Woman, you've successfully caught my attention." He smirked devilishly, pinning her against the corner. Every time I read this part, I could clearly feel the air pressure in the room drop several degrees in an instant. And that innocent heart rate monitor would start beeping frantically like an alarm. I knew he was protesting. But I never tired of it. After all, how many people could claim the experience of forcing the legendary business emperor of Beijing to endure these greasy, cringe-worthy love confessions? Our silent understanding grew deeper through these peculiar daily routines. He became like a mute tree hollow, listening to all my joys and sorrows. And gradually, I grew accustomed to talking to him every day. I even came to believe that communicating with a vegetative person was far easier than talking to normal people. At least he wouldn't argue with me, deceive me, or hurt me. That day, I was reading him the latest gossip magazine when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered, and on the other end was a young man's voice. "Hello, is this Mia?" "It is." "Who's this?" "I'm Ryan." Ryan. That name was like a rusty key, unlocking a long-sealed corner of my memory. He was my senior during college days, and also, someone I once had feelings for. After graduation, he went abroad, and we lost contact. "Senior?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "How did you?" "I've returned to the country." His voice carried a hint of laughter. "Heard about your situation at the class reunion a few days ago. How are you holding up?" That "your situation" naturally refers to me marrying a vegetative patient. "I'm doing fine," I said. "I heard you've suffered quite a bit." Ryan's voice carried a hint of heartache. "Mia, if you're unhappy, don't force yourself to endure it." For some reason, hearing his words didn't warm my heart but instead made me feel somewhat uncomfortable. "I'm really fine, senior. Thank you for your concern." I politely distanced myself. "Are you free this weekend? Let's meet up, just as old friends catching up." Subconsciously, I glanced at Jason lying on the bed. He lay there quietly, seemingly undisturbed by our conversation. Yet somehow, I found myself unwilling to agree. "I'm sorry, senior. This weekend might not work for me. I have to take care of my husband." When I uttered the word husband, I felt my cheeks grow warm. And on the heart rate monitor, that steady flat line suddenly, quite delightfully, jumped upwards. After hanging up the phone, my mind was in turmoil. I walked to the bedside, gazing at Jason's handsome yet lifeless face, and couldn't help but ask, "Hey, tell me, should I go meet him?" Naturally, he didn't answer me. He was someone I used to like. Now he's back from abroad and wants to meet. Logically speaking, there's nothing wrong with old classmates catching up, right? The heart rate monitor showed no fluctuation. But after all, I'm currently your wife in name. Though our marriage is more like a joke. But if I were to go meet my ex who was like a moonlight in my heart, wouldn't that be somewhat unchaste? The heart rate monitor remained perfectly calm. TCH, how boring. I pursed my lips. Forget it, no point asking you. What would a vegetative person know about romantic relationships? I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Faint, yet extremely rhythmic, the sound of knocking on the bed frame. I froze instantly, holding my breath. That sound again. Tap, tap, tap. He knocked once more. My mind raced. What did this rhythm mean? One long, two short. I frantically searched my thoughts. Suddenly, something flashed through my mind like lightning. Morse code. I used to learn a little bit out of interest before. Though I've mostly forgotten, I can still barely remember the simplest codes. One long, two short. That's the letter D. D? What does D mean? Don't go? Tentatively, I whispered to him, "Are you telling me not to go?" This time, he didn't tap again. But on the heart rate monitor, that flat line suddenly jumped upward with a forceful thump. Like a resolute affirmation. My heart skipped a beat along with that curve. I gazed at the man on the bed, and for the first time I sensed an indomitable, overwhelming possessiveness emanating from him. Was he jealous? A vegetative man, actually jealous of me? This realization shocked me more than seeing him smile or move. And somehow, inexplicably, it made my heart flutter with a hint of sweetness. On the weekend, I ultimately didn't meet Ryan. I sent him a text saying my husband couldn't be left alone, then ignored all his replies. I don't know if it's my imagination, but since that day, Jason's interactions have become noticeably more frequent. He no longer responded to me just with his heartbeat, but began tapping simple Morse codes on the bedboard using his movable index finger. Most of the time, it was just a single monotonous letter. For instance, when I complained about my second aunt coming to pick on me again, he'd tap a bead bitch. When I mocked my cousin Yo-Yo's fashion sense, he'd tap an S stupid. And when I mentioned my vampire-like stepmother, he'd tap a drawn-out F, you know what it means. I think I might be the first person in the world to perform crosstalk with a vegetative patient using Morse code. And Jason is definitely the coolest audience in history. Our hospital room life was filled with such joys that outsiders could never understand. That is, until Yo-Yo brought along an unexpected guest and shattered the peace. That afternoon, I was reading a finance book to Jason, treating it as a study session. Suddenly, Yo-Yo pushed the door open and entered, followed by a woman dressed to the nines. I recognized that woman. Her name was Fifi, a D-list celebrity and Yo-Yo's close friend. She was also the rumored girlfriend who had been the hottest topic in the media before Jason's car accident. Sister-in-law, Fifi heard about my brother's illness and came specifically to see him. Yo-Yo's tone was dripping with schadenfreude. Fifi then put on a heartbroken act, throwing herself onto the bedside, grabbing Jason's hand as tears started falling. Jason, how could this happen to you? Wake up, look at me. Her performance was so exaggerated it made me cringe hard enough to dig out a Barbie dream house with my toes. I stood to the side, arms crossed, watching her act with cold detachment. Mia, Fifi finally stopped crying and turned to me, her eyes filled with hostility and scrutiny. You've really been working hard taking care of him all this time. She deliberately emphasized my name with biting clarity. Not at all. It's what spouses do for each other, I said with a smile, stressing the word spouses. Fifi's expression noticeably stiffened. I heard you only married into this family for the money as a luck bride? She wiped her tears, her tone suddenly turning sharp. Someone like you, can you really take proper care of Jason? Whether I can or not is none of your concern, I replied with a humorless smile. Though I am curious, the media always called you Jason's girlfriend before. How come you disappeared the moment he had his accident, only showing up now? Has your schedule cleared up recently with fewer gigs? My words hit her right where it hurt. Fifi's face instantly turned the color of liver. You're talking nonsense, she sputtered furiously. Jason and I truly love each other. If it weren't for you coming out of nowhere, I should be the one standing here right now. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. True love? Then dare I ask, do you know what Jason is allergic to? Do you know what food he hates most? Do you know there's a tiny mole on his left shoulder? With each question I asked, Fifi grew paler. These were all details I'd discovered while taking care of Jason these past days. Fifi couldn't answer a single one, and could only glare at me in humiliated rage. What are you so smug about? Yo-Yo, who was standing nearby, immediately chimed in to back her up. You're just a glorified nurse. My brother doesn't like you at all. Whether he likes me or not isn't for you to say, I said coldly. Yo-Yo was left speechless by my retort and stomped her foot in frustration. Suddenly, her eyes darted to the thermos I had placed on the nightstand. It contained my lunch, a bowl of millet porridge. She rushed over, snatched the thermos, unscrewed the lid, and flung its contents straight at me. Ah! I instinctively screamed and closed my eyes. However, the expected scalding porridge never landed on me. I heard a loud clang and Yo-Yo's cry of pain. My eyes flew open. There was Yo-Yo, sprawled on the floor with the thermos fallen to one side and millet porridge spilled everywhere. And right by her feet was Jason's pale, hospital-gowned arm hanging limply by the bedside. It was him. He had reached out and tripped Yo-Yo. though his movement was so fast it seemed like an illusion, and his hand immediately returned to its original position as if it had never moved. But in that instant, I saw it. Fifi and Yo-Yo were both petrified. They stared in horror at Jason's completely motionless hand, then at Yo-Yo who had fallen to the ground, their faces filled with disbelief. "Gigi ghost, ghost." Yo-Yo scrambled to her feet, grabbed Fifi, and fled the ward without looking back. The room finally returned to silence. I looked at the mess on the floor, then at the man on the bed who was still comatose, my heart pounding wildly. This was the first time my ally, who had only communicated with me through Morse code, acted for me in the real world. To protect me, he took the enormous risk of exposing himself. A warm current slowly welled up from the depths of my heart. I walked to the bedside, leaned down, and whispered in his ear with a voice only the two of us could hear, "Jason, you just now were absolutely dashing." Ever since Jason took action to trip Yo-Yo, I became even more certain he wasn't just pretending to sleep, he was playing an elaborate game of chess. And I was the most important, most special piece on his board. I began working even harder to gather intelligence for him. No longer content with just venting in the hospital room, I started taking the initiative. Under the guise of going for walks, I'd cozy up to the gossip-loving servants in the main house's garden. "Rose, I noticed Lana seems to be in a good mood lately." "You're absolutely right. I heard William is about to close that overseas project. If this deal goes through, William's position in the company will be." I would also dutifully serve tea and listen attentively to the gossip whenever my mother-in-law Catherine and her wealthy lady circle had afternoon tea together. "Catherine, your second son has been quite the rising star recently. I heard he's bypassed your Richard entirely and started dealing directly with the board members." "Humph, who doesn't know what he's scheming?" I pieced together these fragmented bits of information and faithfully relayed them to Jason during our nightly talk show sessions. He was like a strategizing general, quietly listening to the battlefield reports delivered by me, his messenger from the front lines. Though he couldn't speak, I could sense his rapidly calculating mind beneath that calm exterior through the fluctuations in his heart rate and the occasional Morse code taps. Our coordination was becoming increasingly seamless. Until one day, I discovered something that sent chills down my spine. That day, as usual, I went to the main house. Passing by second Uncle William's study, I noticed the door wasn't fully closed and overheard his conversation with his son Henry. "Dad, with Jason in this condition, can't you secure that project yet?" It was Henry's voice. "What do you know?" William replied impatiently. "Your stubborn uncle refuses to budge. Those old foxes on the board are still watching and waiting. So we're just supposed to keep waiting like this? It won't be much longer." William's voice suddenly dropped, laced with a hint of malice. "I've already made arrangements. At most one more month, and Jason will take a turn for the worse and be beyond saving. By then, even if your uncle refuses to accept it, he'll have no choice but to hand the company over to me." My blood ran cold in that instant. They were planning to kill Jason. Terrified out of my wits, I covered my mouth and silently retreated, sprinting all the way back to the hospital room. I locked the door behind me, my entire body trembling uncontrollably. "Jason, Jason." I threw myself to the bedside, my voice trembling. "Something terrible happened. I just heard your uncle say, he wants to kill you." The man on the bed remained motionless as always. But on the heart rate monitor, that flat line suddenly spiked to an alarmingly dangerous level. He heard me. He was just as shocked and furious as I was. "What should we do? What can we do now?" I panicked like an ant on a hot griddle. "Should we call the police?" "No, we don't have proof." "Should we tell your father?" "But, you don't even trust him, do you?" After asking, I stared fixedly at his hand. This time, he didn't disappoint me. His index finger began tapping against the bedboard with an unprecedented, urgent and forceful rhythm. Tap tap tap. "Send?" I froze for a moment. "Send what? To whom?" He started tapping again. This time, it was a series of numbers. 189. It was a phone number. I immediately took out my phone and wrote down the sequence. And then? He tapped a few more letters. Car. Car? I frowned. What do you mean? Is there something wrong with the car that caused your accident? His heart rate suddenly skipped a beat. I understood now. Did you already know the accident wasn't an accident? Did you hide some evidence in the car? This time, he mustered all his strength and typed out a complete word, yes. My mind buzzed with realization. So, all of this was truly a scheme from the beginning. And he had long since prepared a backup plan. I understand. I looked at him, my eyes filled with unwavering determination. Don't worry, leave this matter to me. I will definitely find the evidence. At that moment, I no longer felt like a bride brought in for auspiciousness, nor a stand-up comedian. I had become his comrade in arms, the only person he could trust and rely on. And I was willing, wholeheartedly willing. With the clues Jason gave me, I sprang into action immediately. The top priority was finding that accident vehicle. First, I approached the butler and asked probing questions. What happened to the car Jason had the accident in? How was it handled afterwards? The butler sighed, don't even mention it. It was practically totaled in the crash and had long been sent to the junkyard in the suburbs. Which scrapyard? Out by the Western Hills, in one of the Ravenshill family's private warehouses. The boss said it bothered him to look at it, wouldn't allow it to be disposed of, so it's just been sitting there. Having gotten the address, I felt more confident. But the next problem was, how could I get to the Western Hills warehouse without anyone noticing? I tossed this dilemma to Jason during our evening talk show time. The security at the Western Hills warehouse is tight. A woman suddenly going to a scrapyard would definitely raise suspicions. Especially with your dear uncle probably sniffing around like a bloodhound right now. The moment I finished speaking, I heard the sound of his fingers tapping. Divert. Divert their attention? My eyes lit up, great idea. But how? He tapped a few more letters. Yo-yo. Yo-yo? I was taken aback for a moment, then suddenly understood. You mean, use yo-yo to divert their attention? My heart definitely skipped a beat. Brilliant. I couldn't help slapping my thigh. That airhead yo-yo only thinks about handbags and men, she's perfect to use as a smokescreen. A perfect plan quickly took shape in my mind. The next day, I accidentally ran into Yo-Yo as she was about to head out. Yo-Yo, all dressed up today, going on a date? I greeted her warmly. Yo-Yo rolled her eyes at me but couldn't resist showing off, of course. It's my boyfriend's birthday today, and I specially reserved a table at Starlight Restaurant to surprise him. Starlight Restaurant? I faked surprise and covered my mouth. Oh no, what a coincidence. I'm meeting friends there for dinner today too. Do you think we might run into each other? Yo-Yo's expression immediately became somewhat uncomfortable. I chuckled inwardly. Because I'd already found out that her so-called boyfriend was actually a notorious playboy from the east side of town who was dating several girlfriends at once. And Starlight Restaurant happened to be one of his most frequented dating hotspots. Yo-Yo clearly knew this as well. She was afraid of running into her love rival there and losing face. Sis-in-law, she hesitated for a moment but couldn't help asking, could you eat somewhere else? Somewhere else? I feigned difficulty, but I've already made plans with friends. Besides, I heard their new desserts are particularly delicious. I deliberately made it sound like I absolutely had to go. Sure enough, Yo-Yo grew anxious. She thought for a moment, then gritted her teeth. She said, sister-in-law, how about this? I'll recommend a better place to you, a newly opened hot spring resort on West Mountain. The environment is excellent, and it's very private. I'll give you my VIP card, and all expenses will be on me. Don't go to Starlight Restaurant, okay? The fish has taken the bait. That's too much trouble, I pretended to decline. Not at all. It's settled then. Yo-Yo insisted, shoving the card into my hand as if afraid I might change my mind, then clattered away in her high heels. I held that VIP card with a triumphant smile curling at the corner of my lips. That afternoon, I drove openly toward West Mountain. Even if someone was following me, all they'd learn was this: Yo-Yo had bribed me with a VIP card, and I'd happily skipped off to soak in the hot springs. A petty, irresponsible woman who jumps at small advantages, exactly the persona I wanted them to see. When I reached West Mountain, I didn't head to the hot spring resort. Instead, I turned onto a side road halfway there and drove straight to that abandoned warehouse. The warehouse door was tightly locked, but that didn't faze me. I pulled out a pre-prepared wire from my bag and fiddled with the lock for a while. With a click, the lock opened. I pushed the heavy iron door aside, and a wave of rust and dust assaulted my senses. Inside the warehouse sat a black Bentley that had been nearly crushed into scrap metal. That was the one. I put on gloves and a mask before climbing into the driver's seat. The interior was a mess, shattered glass and dried blood everywhere. Suppressing my discomfort, I began searching for the evidence that Jason had hidden, following his instructions. Car, that was the word he had tapped. The evidence was in the car. But with such a large vehicle, where could he have hidden it? I practically turned the entire driver's compartment inside out, even checking between the seat cushions, but found nothing. Had I misunderstood? Just as I was about to give up, my gaze landed on the blood-stained L-shaped emblem in the center of the steering wheel. My heart skipped a beat. I reached out cautiously and tried prying the emblem. To my surprise, it came loose. Beneath it lay a small hidden compartment. In the groove lay quietly a rice grain-sized, black memory card. I found it. Clutching it tightly in my palm, my heart raced wildly with excitement and tension. With this, I held William's death warrant. I reattached the car emblem, erased all traces, and left the warehouse without a sound. On the way back, the setting sun was perfect. Gazing out the window, I felt for the first time that the dark clouds hanging over the Ravenshill family seemed about to disperse. The first thing I did after obtaining the memory card was hand it over to Jason. Of course, not in the physical sense. I found a completely secure card reader and exported the contents. It was a dashcam video. The footage was shaky and the audio was full of static. But it clearly showed that before the accident, someone had tampered with Jason's car brakes. Moreover, a black van had deliberately rammed into it from the side. Most crucially, the end of the video captured a conversation. It was between the van driver and his companion. Mission accomplished. Shouldn't William settle the final payment now? Don't worry, you'll get your share. The evidence was irrefutable. I sent this video via encrypted method to the phone number Jason had previously given me. After accomplishing this, I finally breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as though I'd just survived a tough battle. Hey, mission accomplished. I flashed a V sign at Jason lying on the bed. Now it's your turn. Are you planning to shove this video right in your uncle's face, or do you want to play something more exciting? His fingers tapped several letters on the bedboard, unhurried and deliberate. Wait. I frowned. What else are you waiting for? He typed a few more words. Will? I was stunned. Who's Will? He didn't respond again. But I understood immediately. Jason was waiting for his grandfather to make a will. He didn't just want to ruin William's reputation, he wanted to deliver the fatal blow when William was at his most triumphant, when he thought victory was assured. This man is terrifyingly cunning. And terrifyingly charming. The following days passed peacefully. William's project seemed to have hit a deadlock due to Richard's obstruction. He grew visibly restless. As for me, I continued playing my role as the good-for-nothing. Every day was either spent drinking tea in the garden or dozing off at my mother-in-law's afternoon tea gatherings. Finally, a week later, the butler summoned everyone to the main house for a family meeting. Pushing the comatose Jason in his wheelchair, I also arrived at the meeting room in mine. Jason's grandfather sat at the head seat, his expression grave. Beside him stood the Ravenshill family's legal counsel attorney. After everyone had gathered, the grandfather cleared his throat and spoke slowly. "I've called everyone here today to announce something. I've already had the lawyer draft my will." At these words, everyone's expressions turned subtle. Especially Uncle William, though he tried hard to conceal it, the glint of greed and anticipation in his eyes was impossible to hide. "Dad, you're still in such robust health, why bring this up suddenly?" William spoke with feigned concern. "As one grows old, one must always arrange their affairs in order." Grandpa glanced at him with a meaningful gaze, "So that after I'm gone, some people won't fight tooth and nail over the family fortune, making a spectacle for outsiders." William's face stiffened. "Lawyer, please read it out." Grandpa waved his hand. The lawyer nodded and opened the document in his hand. "According to Chris's wishes, all real estate under his name shall be equally divided between his eldest son Richard and his second son William." Hearing this, William couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth into a slight upward smile. 51% of the shares in Stellaris Group held by him will be entirely inherited by his eldest grandson, Jason, alone. As soon as the lawyer finished speaking, the entire meeting room fell into a deathly silence. Everyone's gazes turned toward the motionless vegetable sitting in the wheelchair as if they had seen a ghost. "What?" William was the first to jump up, his face ashen. "Dad, have you lost your mind? In Jason's current state, how can he inherit the company? Handing the company over to him is tantamount to destroying the Ravenshill family." "I'm not dead yet, the company won't be ruined," Grandpa said coldly. "But..." "There are no buts. Grandpa cut him off, eyes blazing. "As long as Jason is alive for even one day, he remains the sole heir of Stellaris Group. Unless..." He paused, glancing at me beside him. "Unless Jason unfortunately passes away without leaving any heirs. In that case, all shares under his name will be held by his legal wife, Mia, until any child she bears for Jason comes of age." My mind went blank with a buzzing sound. Me? Inherit Stellaris Group? I became the biggest winner? I stared at Grandpa in disbelief, then glanced at Jason beside me. Was this also part of his plan? Not only had he outmaneuvered his enemies, but even me, had I been played too? The will reading ended in discord. Second Uncle William's face turned as dark as a burnt pot. The look he gave me was filled with venom and murderous intent. I had no doubt that if looks could kill, I'd have been sliced to pieces by now. Back in the hospital room, I still hadn't recovered from the tremendous shock. I had become the second heir to Stellaris Group. The whole thing felt like some absurd dream. "Jason," I looked at the man on the bed with mixed emotions, "was this your arrangement? Did you know all along that Grandpa would write his will this way?" His fingers tapped lightly on the bed frame. "Yes." My heart sank. "Why?" I couldn't help but ask, "Why drag me into this? Don't you know what you've done has thrown me into the eye of the storm? Now William definitely sees me as a thorn in his flesh." He didn't respond. "What do you take me for? A more useful chess piece?" My voice carried a hint of grievance and anger. "I thought we were allies, comrades in arms. But in his heart, am I just another expendable link in his grand scheme?" The room was filled with prolonged silence. On the heart rate monitor, that flat line remained as steady as death itself. Suddenly, I felt utterly ridiculous. Like a clown, I had presumptuously participated in a game whose rules I never truly understood. "Forget it." I smiled self-deprecatingly and stood up. "Get some rest, Air. I turned around to leave. Just then, I heard rapid, forceful knocking sounds coming from behind me. "Not." I froze in place without turning back. He continued knocking. Protection? My heart suddenly skipped a beat. I turned around and stared at him in disbelief. "You're saying, you did this to protect me?" This time, his heartbeat surged upward with extraordinary intensity. My eyes instantly reddened. I understood. He wasn't using me. He was protecting me in the most clumsy yet most resolute way possible. He knew William would resort to desperate measures and would inevitably target me. So he had Grandpa draft such a will, making me the nominal owner of Stellaris Group. This way, I was no longer just a disposable, auspicious bride to be manipulated at will. My safety became directly tied to the future of the entire Stellaris Group. Harming me would mean attacking the very foundation of the Ravenshill family. This man, lying in bed, unable to speak or move, had still paved the safest path for me. He had taken me under his wing. "You, dummy," I sniffled, walking back to the bedside and leaning over to look at his pale face. "Who asked you to protect me?" Though I said those words, my heart felt full, as if something warm had filled it completely. Just then, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I intended to hang up at first, but after hesitating, I answered it. "Mia, I have something very important to tell you." Ryan's voice on the phone sounded extremely serious, about Jason's car accident. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you know?" "I have a friend who works at the traffic police department. I asked him to help look into Jason's accident case files." Ryan continued, "I discovered that the driver responsible for the accident received a large sum of money afterward, then completely vanished. And the bank account that transferred the money. I traced it, and it ultimately leads to..." He paused. "Who was it?" I pressed. "It was a vice president from Stellaris Group named Julian." Julian. That name rang a bell. If I recalled correctly, he was one of Uncle William's most trusted subordinates. "And," Ryan continued, "I also found out that this Julian is quite close with Jason's Uncle William in private." My heart sank completely. Although I had long suspected it was William's doing, seeing the chain of evidence laid out so clearly still sent a chill down my spine. How could he, his own nephew, do such a thing? "Mia, you're in grave danger at the Ravenshill family," Ryan's voice was full of concern. "Listen to me, leave that place as soon as possible. The Ravenshill family is a den of danger." "I understand. Thank you, Senior." I hung up the phone with a heavy heart. Looking at Jason lying on the bed, I whispered, "Your enemies are more than one. And now, he's running out of patience. We all know the final showdown is about to arrive." Ryan's phone call was like a signal heralding the coming storm. Having suffered heavy losses in the will dispute and failing to secure the overseas project, William has become like a trapped beast, ready to make his last desperate counterattack at any moment. As the nominal second heir, I naturally became the biggest thorn in his side. I could clearly feel the atmosphere in the villa growing increasingly eerie. The servants who used to be somewhat polite to me now cast furtive glances my way. The meals I ordered would accidentally be delivered wrong. I was walking in the garden when a flower pot coincidentally fell from upstairs, landing right by my feet. I knew this was William's warning. He was using these underhanded little tactics to test me, to intimidate me, trying to make me back down. But I didn't retreat. I still went about my days as usual, eating, drinking, venting when needed. The only difference was that I now carried a voice recorder and a compact stun gun with me. I was waiting. Waiting for him to lose all patience and bare his most lethal fangs. That evening, as usual, I was telling Jason some office gossip. "Your Vice President Julian really got chewed out by your dad in today's meeting. Apparently because of some data error that cost the company several $1,000,000. Judging by his face, he probably wanted to die right then and there." I spoke while observing Jason's reaction. Sure enough, his fingers began tapping. "Not him." "Not him?" I was stunned. "What do you mean? The data error wasn't his doing?" He tapped again. "My people," I gasped sharply. "Julian is one of your people?" My heart definitely skipped a beat. My mind raced, instantly piecing it all together. Jason had known about William's plan all along. That's why he'd planted his own people around William beforehand. This Julian, who appeared to be William's trusted aide, was actually Jason's mole. And that so-called data error in today's meeting was nothing but a smokescreen deliberately released by Julian under Jason's orders. The purpose was to lull William into thinking Richard's side was already in disarray. What a brilliant stroke of infernal affairs. How many more things are you hiding from me? I stared at the man on the bed, feeling like I was looking at a monster. His scheming, his meticulous planning, far exceeded anything I could have imagined. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text message from that mysterious number, the one I'd sent the video to. The message was brief: "Tonight, make your move." My heart leapt into my throat. Tonight? Was William planning to strike against Jason right under my nose? I immediately turned my gaze toward Jason lying on the bed. He seemed to sense something too. On the heart monitor, that flat line began pulsing erratically. "Don't be afraid." I leaned down and grasped his cold hand. "I'm here." I don't know where I found the courage to say those words. But I knew I couldn't let him face this alone. We were like grasshoppers tied to the same rope. If we died, we'd die together. I turned off all the lights in the room, leaving only the dimmest wall lamp on. Then I took something out from the cabinet. A small wireless camera I had borrowed from the security room days earlier. I hid it behind the leaves of a potted plant directly facing the large bed. After completing all this, I lay down on the accompanying sofa, closed my eyes, and pretended to be asleep. But my hand hidden beneath the blanket tightly gripped the stun baton. Time passed minute by minute. Late at night. All was silent. I heard it, the faintest metallic scraping sound coming from the door lock. He was here. The door was pushed open without a sound, just a crack. A dark figure slipped in like a cat. By the dim moonlight from the window, I could make out the intruder's face. It wasn't William, it was his son, Henry. In his hand, he held a pillow. My heart sank. They planned to suffocate Jason with it. That way, they could fake the common respiratory failure of a vegetative patient. What a vicious scheme. I remained motionless, only tightening my grip on the stun baton in my hand. Henry crept stealthily to the bedside, looking down at Jason, who was unconscious on the bed, his face twisting into a cruel, exhilarated grin. "Don't blame me, big brother," he whispered in a venomous tone. "Blame yourself for being in the way. Don't worry, after you're gone, I'll take good care of your company and your wife." As he spoke, he raised the pillow in his hand and pressed it down hard over Jason's face. Now was the moment. I sprang up from the couch and, with lightning speed, jammed the stun baton into Henry's lower back. A piercing electric sizzle, a sharp current sound rang out. Henry's entire body convulsed violently, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground like a limp rag. I stared at Henry lying on the floor, my heart still pounding wildly. But I knew this wasn't over yet. Henry was just an accomplice. The real mastermind was still behind the scenes. Sure enough, before long, the door creaked open again. This time, William walked in. When he saw his son sprawled on the ground and me standing beside him, his face instantly paled. You weren't asleep?" he gasped, staring at me in horror. "Uncle, what are you doing in my room so late at night?" I stared coldly at him, still gripping the stun baton in my hand. William's expression swiftly shifted from panic to ruthless determination. At this point, he knew there was no turning back. "You little bitch, I was going to let you live a few more days." From behind his back, he actually pulled out a gleaming dagger. "Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, I'll send both of you on your way together." As he spoke, he lunged at me. Instinctively, I stepped back but tripped over the foot of the bed, falling backward onto Jason's body. William's eyes blazed with murderous intent as he raised the dagger and viciously aimed for my heart. This is the end. I closed my eyes, my mind completely blank. Yet the excruciating pain I anticipated never came. All I heard was a sickening thud, the sound of steel piercing flesh, followed by William's muffled grunt. My eyes flew open. The sight before me would haunt me forever. Jason, the vegetative man who'd lain motionless for months, had somehow propped himself upright. With his own arm, he'd thrown himself between me and danger. That razor-sharp dagger now stood buried deep in his forearm, blood instantly saturating his hospital gown. You. William stared at Jason, who had suddenly come alive, scared out of his wits, stammering incoherently. Jason ignored him. His deep-set eyes, in the dim light, burned like two flickering flames. Slowly, he raised his uninjured hand and, swift as lightning, seized William by the throat. You deserve to die. It was the first time in months I'd heard his voice. Hoarse, low, yet carrying the aura of an Azura from hell. With just those few words, he pronounced William's death sentence. Held aloft by Jason's single hand like a chicken with its neck wrung, William's face was a portrait of terror and despair. Jason, please, let me explain. He managed to force out a few words with difficulty from his throat. Explain? Jason's lips curled into a cold smile. Save it for the police. As soon as the words fell, the hospital room door was violently kicked open from outside. A swarm of uniformed police officers rushed in. Leading them was Jason's father, Richard. Taking in the scene in the room that could rival a movie plot, his face darkened. He spoke gravely to the officers behind him. My younger brother William is suspected of attempted murder. Lying on the floor is his son Henry. They will all serve as witnesses. William and Henry were taken away by the police on the spot. As for me, I sat dumbfounded on the bed, staring blankly at the man whose arm was still pierced with a knife yet remained unshakably composed. So, all of this had truly been part of his plan. He deliberately exposed Julian as a weakness to lure William into making his move. He had calculated that William would choose tonight, the moment he believed their defenses were at their weakest. He had even arranged for the police in advance. He orchestrated this entire play with one sole purpose, to ensure William would be caught red-handed, leaving him with no chance of recovery. And I, that desperate clown ready to fight for my life with a stun gun, was merely a prop to embellish his perfectly orchestrated show. An overwhelming sense of loss engulfed me. Your injuries. My voice grew hoarse as I stared at the shocking wounds on his arm. Superficial. He didn't even glance at them, simply fixing me with those bottomless eyes. Doctors and nurses rushed in immediately, turning the room into complete chaos. I was ushered out to the living room. Richard, who had always been like an invisible presence, stepped forward to face me. Thank you for today, he said, his gaze complicated as he looked at me. If it weren't for you, Jason would have. I just did what I had to, I replied, lowering my eyes. You're a good kid, he sighed, pulling out a check from his coat and handing it to me. Here's $50 million. Consider it compensation. Your marriage to Jason was just a transaction to begin with. Now, the deal is over. Take this money and live your own life. He phrased it gently, but I understood. He was telling me to take the money and leave. And why wouldn't he? Jason was awake now. A mere lucky charm like me no longer had any value. I looked at that check and suddenly found it laughable. I'd fought tooth and nail to protect his secrets, to protect him. In the end, to him and his family, I was just an outsider who could be dismissed with money. I didn't take the check. I simply stood up and bowed deeply to Richard. Dad, take good care of him. With those words, I didn't look back. Dragging my exhausted body, I walked out of this gilded cage I'd lived in for months. The sky outside was almost dawn. I took a deep breath of the cool morning air, feeling as if I had finally awakened from a long dream. Fine. The game was over. It was time to return to my own life. I moved back into my small but cozy rented apartment. I didn't take the $50 million from Jason's father, nor did I bring anything that didn't belong to me. I blocked all contact with my stepmother, changed my phone number, and found an ordinary job, ready to start over. From the Ravenshill family, there was no further news. The newspapers were flooded with headlines about William, the second in command of Stellaris Group, being arrested for attempted murder of his own nephew. Jason's name once again graced the financial headlines. That former vegetative patient had made a triumphant return to the public eye like a king reclaiming his throne. With swift and decisive actions, he purged all remnants of the second branch's influence within the company and launched several groundbreaking projects that shocked the industry. He remained that heaven's favored son standing atop the pyramid. Meanwhile, I became like forgotten dust, quietly vanishing from his world unnoticed. Sometimes in the dead of night, I still reminisce about those absurd days. About the man who could only communicate with me through Morse code while lying in bed. About that protective hand he extended to shield me. About that moment when he stepped in front of me, letting the knife pierce his arm without flinching. Then, I laughed at myself, what a fool. Maybe it was just another scene scripted in his play. After all, how could someone like him ever develop genuine feelings for a babbling, gossipy bride meant to bring good luck? Life went on in this monotonous, uneventful way. Until one day, a month later. When I got home from work, I found a row of luxury cars parked downstairs in my rundown neighborhood, the kind I'd only ever seen on TV before. A group of bodyguards dressed in black suits stood by the cars, their intimidating presence forcing passers-by to detour. Then, the door of the lead Rolls-Royce swung open. A slender leg stepped out. Then I saw that face, the strikingly handsome one that had appeared in my dreams countless times. Jason. He was wearing a perfectly tailored handmade suit, with a faint bandage still wrapped around his forearm. He had lost some weight, but his energy was vibrant, his entire presence like an unsheathed sword, sharp and commanding. He simply stood there, looking at me. Everything around him seemed to fade into the background. I froze, unsure how to react. He walked toward me. Step by step, as though treading on the rhythm of my heartbeat. Finally, he stopped right in front of me. Had enough fun, he spoke, his voice carrying a hint of magnetic charm that I remembered, yet now it seemed even richer. Jason, is there something you need? I lowered my head, my tone polite but distant. Mia. He called my name, a trace of helplessness in his tone. Do you think I had my father give you that check because I wanted to drive you away? I remained silent, which was as good as admitting it. Suddenly, he laughed. That was your hard-earned fee, he said. For you to build your own team and acquire your stepmother's nearly bankrupt company. I thought you'd understand. I abruptly looked up at him, my face filled with disbelief. I waited for you for a month, he said, gazing at me with an expression I'd never seen before, tenderness mixed with a hint of grievance. I thought you'd take that money, make a triumphant return, then point at my nose and say, now I'm a domineering CEO too, from now on, you answer to me. My eyes instantly welled up. This damned man. Why does his train of thought always have to be so bizarre? Who cares about you? I retorted with reddened eyes, my voice stubborn. You do. He stepped forward and pulled me into his embrace. That embrace was warm and solid, carrying a familiar, comforting scent of cedarwood. Mia, he murmured in a near enticing, deep voice by my ear, my illness hasn't fully recovered yet. What? The doctor said there will be after effects from my condition. What after effects? I asked nervously. He lowered his head, his scorching lips pressed against my ear as he spoke slowly, word by word. The side effect is, from now on, every night, if I don't hear your complaints, I'll have insomnia. My face instantly turned completely red. So, he chuckled softly, kissing my earlobe, darling, for your husband's health, shall we begin tonight's after-sleep service?